The Yay or Nay Show with Alex C. A sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. And now, here is Alex C.
Okay, here we go. It is the Yay or Nay Show with Alex C., a sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. Let's kick off some of the Yay or Nay questions. I do have some brand new ones up for you now, by the way. You can always go to the Twitter page at Yay or Nay Podcast, the address to the Twitter page, and you can go answer some of these questions. But these ones have come back. Who wins, Dallas or Carolina? This one I put up before the game on Sunday, and we are going to get very involved into this game in regards to what we're going to be discussing today. But Dallas or Carolina? So the voting came back. 57% of the people that voted said that Dallas was going to win, and in fact, the fans were correct. Dallas did beat Carolina. Another question, are the Denver Broncos for real? 100% of the people that voted, and again, this was prior to this weekend's games when I put this poll out, are the Denver Broncos for real? 100% of the people that voted said, nay, the Denver Broncos are not, in fact, for real. Another question that came back, are the Carolina Panthers for real? Now, this one was interesting. This one came back 50-50, split down the middle in regards to Carolina Panthers. Are they for real? So there was no definitive answer from the fans in regards to this question, but we'll have a little bit of that discussion today as well, since we're going to talk about the Dallas-Carolina game. A lot of things to talk about, but first we have to kick it off with the obvious game last night, Sunday night. I told you I was getting ready to sit down and watch the game at the end of yesterday's podcast. Sat down, watched the game, and, of course, listened to what everybody had to say about the game today. So that's going to be like a lot of fuel for today's conversation. So let's start off with, wow, where do I even begin? Let's start off with what I heard today. Let's start off with what the national guys were saying about this. First of all, in unison, everybody was talking about what a great game Tom Brady played, what a great game it was, how Tampa Bay is back. Tampa Bay is the best team in football, and how Bill Belichick threw it all out there, but he waited until they were in the red zone to throw all the different looks at Tom Brady. He kind of stayed flexible in between the 20s, but once they got into the red zone, that's when Bill Belichick started to throw all these different looks at Tom, and it started to disorient Tom, and it made it impossible for him to make the moves he wanted to make. And therefore, that's the reason why you had the end results that you had at the end of all the drives. All right. Now, that kind of was a small synopsis in regards to what the national media guys were talking about. The other piece, obviously, was everybody was talking about what happened with Bill and Tom at the end. Everybody couldn't wait to see what was going to happen. And then, in fact, all you saw was, Bill come up to Tom, basically give him a little hug for like 1.5 seconds and then walk away. And everybody was like, wow, different kinds of thoughts in regards to that. Some said he was blowing Tom off. Others said that they didn't expect anything different because, Bill is Bill, and that's kind of the way Bill is. If you look at Bill Belichick, he seems like he's kind of a cold guy, and so why would he just all of a sudden open up and show all these emotions in the middle of a football field at the end of a game that he lost, especially when his team fought so hard to win? And there's a lot of different thoughts in regards to this game as well, and it's going to take a while to go over this all. But it turns out in the end that, after the game, they had it set up and designed so that they would meet for 20 minutes at the end of the game, and Bill and Tom would have their own private conversation, which, of course, they're obviously going to keep private. Tom did a couple of interviews where he stated that, obviously there were a lot of conversations over the 20-year period where him and Bill had very in-depth conversations, and he wants to keep them private and hopes that everybody would respect his wishes in regards to keeping them private, and that all of the thoughts and comments that he's heard over the past 2 weeks have been inaccurate. And obviously there's nobody from inside either one of the two camps talking. That's the reason why everybody who's talking has given such bad misinformation. Now, there's kind of a lot to unravel there, right? I just kind of let out a whole lot of stuff. But the bottom line is it's pretty accurate in regards to, again, everything that I heard and everything that was discussed, and even right out of the horse's mouth when it comes to Tom Brady and what he had to say. I have said all along, national media has sounded like a bunch of little schoolgirls running around acting as if this was a big deal that a former coach and a former player, irregardless of the fact that they played together for 20 years, were going to match up against each other for the first time. So what? The coach doesn't put on pads. The coach doesn't play on the field. And Belichick has an inferior team, a team that's rebuilding with a rookie quarterback, a pure rookie quarterback at that. and you have a team that just won the Super Bowl, and they're in a weak division, so they're going to win their division. They're going to go back to the playoffs. So you have a playoff-bound team against a rebuilding team going against each other, and yet somehow national media guys, certain ones even called this the game of the decade. Some said century. And I'm sitting there saying, no, it's not. Because, again, a team on the rebuild versus a team that's going to the playoffs because they're in a bad division. And again, isn't it ironic that the team that Tom picks to go to is just like the Patriots? They're in a bad division, but as soon as the Patriots were going to be in a more competitive division, he leaves, he bails, and he goes to the team that's in a bad division like he was used to having in New England, where they went against the Jets, the Bills, and the Miami Dolphins, who were all always bad. And then once they started to get competitive, he bails and he goes to Tampa Bay, where he's in a division where, again, the other three teams in the division are bad and they're not going to compete. So isn't that kind of a surprise? But with that being said, bottom line is Tom said the reports are all inaccurate, that what he's been hearing on sports radio is inaccurate. And I would agree. Again, national media made themselves sound like a bunch of schoolgirls running around screaming how important this game was because you had a former coach and a former player. It wasn't important. Again, it was a mismatch of a team on a rebuild, no playoff aspirations, no playoff hopes, against a team that's guaranteed to go to the playoffs and wants to compete to go to the Super Bowl. So how is that a big deal? If that were the game of the century, then I would assume the game of the decade must have been the Jets against the Titans yesterday. I mean, because that's what the equivalency of the two teams is. So I don't know. It just drove me crazy, this whole thing. And again, it's like, when did the NFL become reality TV? It's football. It's sports. It's a game. It's where men go to watch football, not where they go to watch reality TV. If we want to see that, we'll watch Dancing with the Stars. So the fact that the national media tried to turn this into Dancing with the Stars is the biggest joke I have ever seen in the history of national sports media. And I believe they did nothing but embarrass themselves because, again, as Tom Brady said, they misinformed everybody in regards to everything that was taking place, in regards to all the conversations they were saying that they saw and the things that they were hearing. So it's just absolutely ludicrous the way that this came out in regards to the national media and how they hyped this game up and called it the game of the century, and the NFL flexed it to the Sunday night game. Now, again, let's move on to the other things that were said about this game. A lot of people came out and said that Tampa Bay proved that they're the best team in football last night. A lot of people said that Tom Brady looked great last night. A lot of people said that Coach Belichick did his thing last night. A lot of people gave kudos to Bill Belichick. All right, let's talk about all the misnomers now. Okay, so we've now, just to reiterate what we've discussed so far, we've nailed down that this was not the game of the century. A lot of people are going to rail back against me and say, but wait a minute, you said it wasn't going to be competitive. You said it was going to be over by the end of the first half. And yes, I did say those things. Absolutely. It ended up being a competitive game to a point, depending on your point of view of what a competitive game is, and depending on your point of view in general. We're going to discuss all those things. However, will I say that I am wrong in regards to the fact that I said it was not going to be a competitive game and the fact that it was a competitive game? I will say that I was partially wrong. Absolutely. I'm not going to take the big L on this one, however, because I don't see a reason why I would take the big L on this one. Here's what I'm talking about. Score will show you that it was a competitive game. Score will tell you that it was, you know, wall to wall, bell to bell, whistle to whistle, the most competitive game you could possibly watch on a Sunday night. The national media guys will try to make you hyped and understand and think that it was one of the most competitive games, and they kept saying so. Oh, what can you expect? It's another Sunday night great. Here we go. This one's going. It ended good. It ended good. First of all, again, the misnomers. Let's start with the first half. That was a snooze fest. An absolute snooze fest. 7-6 was the score at the end of the half, and it was an absolute 100% snooze fest. I almost fell asleep twice. That was the most horrible half of football I have watched in a long time. Number one. Number two, at the end of the game, you kind of had to watch what was going on, and there's so many things being said by the national media guys, and once again, they got it all wrong, and we're going to go over it all again right now. But there were so many things said about the end of the game. And again, national media guys got it wrong. And we're going to go over this in detail right now because they were trying to say that, first and foremost, Mac Jones, they tried to say he looked horrible. Now you saw how good he's not. He probably, arguably, is the fourth best quarterback in his division. And New England has no chance of any success because he is the fourth best quarterback in his division. And Mac Jones, at this point in his career, versus a young Tom Brady, lost a close game when Tom Brady in his young career was winning close games. There's a bunch of falsity said right there alone. First of all, when Tom Brady started winning, he wasn't a rookie. First and foremost, let me say that one more time. When Tom Brady started winning the close games that these guys are referring to, he was not a rookie. Mac Jones is a pure rookie fresh out of college. He was playing at Alabama last year. And he wasn't even the starting quarterback during OTAs, minicamp, training camp, preseason. He wasn't even the starting quarterback. It wasn't until like right before week 1 when they announced him the starting quarterback and he could finally take all the snaps. And secondly, they're not looking at this realistically. Let's look at this in a realistic point of view. Mac Jones, a rookie, lost a close one. Okay, national media could say he lost a close one. Big deal. He lost a close one to what you guys, national media-wise, are saying is the greatest quarterback of all time. And Mac Jones lost a close game, and he only lost it by, what, 1 or 2 points? I can't even remember the score of last night's game. But it's like 1 or 2 points, okay? They were a field goal away from winning the game. But here's the thing, because there's so many variables to the ending of this game and so many things that the national media guys are saying, and they're absolutely 100% wrong in regards to the things that they're saying. First of all, Mac Jones, he played a great game. 19 connections in a row. He hit 19 passes in a row. Doesn't matter that they were short passes. Does not matter. National media guys want to take it away from him saying, oh, well, they were just quick passes. They weren't anything special. Show me all the other players that got 19 in a row. How about Justin Herbert, the guy you guys are always talking about so much? You're hyping him up as if he's the best quarterback in the NFL right now currently, only in his second year out of Oregon. And yet he doesn't have any 19 passes in a row getting connected in any games that I'm aware of this year. How about that other guy in San Francisco, Trey Lance, that you guys are talking about so much? Hyping him up, saying he's the greatest rookie out of all these guys that have come out this year. I don't see Trey Lance having 19 connections in a row in any games this year. Mac Jones does. Mac Jones is actually allowed to start games. Trey Lance, is he allowed to start games? No, he got put behind Jimmy Garoppolo. So the guy that you're calling the greatest coach in NFL history trusts Mac Jones to be a starting quarterback. Trey Lance, the guy that you guys in the national media are saying is the best quarterback, not a starting quarterback. Herbert, again, no 19 connections in a row in any game that I know of this year. Mac Jones has it. Let's continue to unravel the stuff that the national media guys are talking about and just overhyping. They're talking about, again, he didn't play good. Well, again, really? He went up against the greatest of all time and he barely lost the game. He drove his team down to a game-winning field goal at the end of the fourth quarter, and all that simply happened was the kicker missed it, and he barely missed it at that by hitting the field goal post. So, he fought hard. He battled against the greatest of all time. That what you guys in the national media say is the greatest of all time. He drove his team down for a game-winning field goal, and it just happened to be one that was missed. Had they made that field goal, had New England won, would you guys still be saying the same things about him today? No, it's just that he lost. You want to make fun of him. But had he won, and it would have took a victory, apparently, for you national media guys to give this guy any credit. But you won't give him any credit because he lost. And then even if he would have won, you guys would have made excuses for Tom Brady. Oh, well, the weather, the rain, the fact that they were dealing with that, and he couldn't get a grip on the ball. Last time I checked, Tom Brady played there for over 20 years. So he had no problem playing in the rain in all that time. Never saw the ball slipping out of his hands. Never saw him have a problem with control or getting the ball to any of his receivers or audibilizing or doing any of the things it took to win games. So I never saw him have any problems playing in weather. And now you guys want to make excuses for him, or you would be making excuses for him had they lost last night's game. And then you guys want to say Mac Jones isn't good, and you got the proof because Bill Belichick told you last night when they didn't go for it on 4th and 3. Okay, they didn't go for it on 4th and 3. And that tells you something, apparently, because you guys are mind readers now. Because he did that, you guys all of a sudden know the mindset of Bill Belichick, and you know that for a fact that it's because he didn't trust his quarterback to get 3 yards. And then there's the fact that you guys seem to forget that this guy, Mac Jones, was on a one-dimensional offensive team because they couldn't run the ball. And Tampa Bay knew they couldn't run the ball. So everything they had to do was one-dimensional. The team was riding on Mac Jones' shoulder. And he still stayed competitive, kept his team in the game, got him down in the 4th quarter at the end for a game-winning field goal, and they missed it. And it was all with a one-dimensional offense. And you're telling me that Bill Belichick didn't trust this quarterback? One-dimensional. Didn't continue to try and run the ball. Didn't continue to try and do things to take the ball out of Mac Jones' hands. Didn't try to do things to make it to where it wasn't obvious that they were going to be one-dimensional. His greatest coach of all time put the confidence in him to run the offense one-dimensional, and they went war for war, toe to toe, play for play, stride for stride, and they barely lost the game. And you're saying that you know the mindset of Bill Belichick, and it says that he doesn't trust Mac Jones because he didn't go for it on 4th and 3. When the reality is most teams would not have went for it on 4th and 3, irregardless of whether you got Tom Brady on the other side of the ball or Aaron Rodgers or Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever the other quarterback may have been. No team would have went for it on 4th and 3 when you got a shot to make a field goal. You would have took the field goal, irregardless of the fact whether it's rainy, sunny, hot, hurricane, doesn't matter. Snow, if you're playing, you're playing. And anybody in their right mind knows that any time a team is presented with that situation, 9 times out of 10, because there always is that anomaly, 9 times out of 10, you would have seen the teams not go for it on 4th and 3, take the safety in the fact that they're going to go for a game-winning field goal or a potentially game-winning field goal, and put the trust in the defense's hands that they're going to be able to stop the offense, or at least hope that they're going to stop the offense, right? And Bill Belichick, considering the game that his defense played against Tom Brady last night, wouldn't it make perfect sense that you're not going to go for it on 4th and 3? You're going to execute a field goal, which potentially could be the game winner. And then that defense that has stopped Tom Brady and that Tampa Bay Buccaneer offense all night long, you're going to put it in their hands to do it one last time in order to secure the victory. Why would that not be the mindset of the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm not saying that that's what his thought process was, but it would make sense to me. And a guy like that is going to think 6 or 7 steps ahead. He knows that if he goes down there after they kick a field goal and then you go down there, and the best you could do is kick a potentially game-winning field goal, and then you're going to give the ball back to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a little under a minute left. He knows already right off the bat, he's already theorized, now I'm going to have my defense ready to stop Tom Brady. Great, we got the lead, can't be satisfied, can't jump up and down, can't say that we've got the victory. Now I've got to buckle down my defense, and we got to stop Tom Brady one more time. A coach like Bill Belichick, to me, it makes sense like that, and I would understand if that was his mindset. Not saying, unlike these national media guys, which claim to be mind readers, all of a sudden they know what he's thinking, but it would make sense to say that since he's been stopping Tampa Bay all night long with his defense, why not put it in the hands of his defense one more time? It's not because he doesn't trust Mac Jones to get 3 yards, and it wouldn't have won the game. There's too many other variables, too many other things that could have went wrong. So why not make the field goal, put the defense on the field that's been stopping Tampa Bay all night long, and let it be in their hands to stop them one more time to secure the victory? Wouldn't that make more sense? But instead, these national media guys want to feed you the stuff that, no, it's because he doesn't trust Mac Jones, and I know that for a fact, and so that's the reason why they didn't go for it on 4th and 3, because that would have secured the victory. Granted, had they got a first down, the probability of a victory would have been greater, provided that they would have made the field goal. Again, there are variables involved. Provided that they would have made the field goal, that would, in fact, maybe, perhaps, been the case. But you don't know. but it would have raised the probability. But the fact that they didn't go for it, I don't think, in my opinion, is because Bill Belichick doesn't trust Mac Jones. I think that's just the national media, as they always do, trying to create problems where there actually are none. Again, it would make more sense that since his defense was stopping Tom Brady and Tampa Bay's offense all night long, why not make the potentially game-winning field goal, let your defense stop Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense one more time? That would make more sense. But again, I love how the national media guys are a bunch of mind readers and they know exactly what's in Bill Belichick's head. That, to me, is the most hilarious thing in the world. So, again, a lot of misnomers, a lot of things being said by the national media. It's not true. Tom Brady said it first. I said it first, but Tom Brady said it second. And then, of course, you got the fact of all the things that they said about Tampa Bay and how they're still the Super Bowl favorite. Folks, they went up against a non-playoff team and they barely won. They barely won. Now, they wanted to make excuses on the national media side trying to say, oh, it's because the secondary's injured. Really? Because the last time I checked, I didn't see a team in New England rolling all over that Tampa Bay defense, by the way. I saw a struggle because they're not good, because they don't have playmakers, because they're a team that's in rebuild mode. They had to struggle. And they struggled and they fought hard. But the bottom line is, and they struggled and they fought hard against a team who has Super Bowl ambitions and a team who's guaranteed to win their division in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yet these guys are saying that they are the Super Bowl favorites. But again, Super Bowl favorites, you just got your butts kicked by the Rams last week, and you struggled against a team that's in rebuild mode and only has one victory so far this year. And you're telling me that that's the team that's the Super Bowl favorites? They struggled to beat New England. Make all the excuses you want. Oh, it's the secondary. Okay. Well, how about that front seven? How come they couldn't put a hurting and a stopping on New England? And how is it that you were battling a one-dimensional offense in New England and Tampa Bay couldn't stop a one-dimensional offense, irregardless of the fact that you had a secondary that's depleted? That front seven should have had a field day on a rookie. Should have been able to blitz them, should have been able to stunt them, should have been able to do anything you wanted to. But you didn't. You couldn't. You could have dropped 8 back, considering the fact that they couldn't do anything with the ball running-wise, and you should have been able to make sure they weren't getting any first downs, or at least not that many first downs. But you didn't, because your defense isn't that good. They're not as good as the national media wants you guys to believe. That stuff the national media guys have been feeding you is a bunch of garbage. And I've been saying this before the season started, that it was a bunch of garbage. And you're watching it happen and unravel in front of you, yet the national media still wants you to believe that Tampa Bay is the Super Bowl favorites, and in fact, they are not the Super Bowl favorites. They're not. Absolutely not. And they struggled against a rebuild team. And I don't know how many times I could say this, because it's absolutely incredible that these guys still want you to believe that they're the Super Bowl favorites. And they got their butts kicked last week by the Rams, and they had to struggle. And then let's talk about Tom Brady, because these guys want to say, oh, what a great game he played. He overcame all the emotion. First of all, it's football. I have a hard time believing that Tom Brady became emotional like a little schoolgirl when he got into New England's Gillette Stadium last night, and he had a hard time remembering that he was there to play a football game, because he was playing on the opposing side of the field for the first time in 20 years. I have a hard time believing that that was a big deal. I have a hard time believing the fact that he was going up against Bill Belichick for the first time in 20 years was that big of a deal, that he forgot how to play football. I have a hard time believing that this went from a football game to a reality TV show, and Tom Brady all of a sudden had a hard time and forgot how to play football. I have a hard time believing that the guy who yells, screams, gets mad at his coaches, gets mad at his players, yells at them in practice, he's that intense, he's that focused, he's that prepared. I have a hard time believing that he became that emotional, became a little schoolgirl, and he forgot how to play football just because he was going against his former team in his former stadium against his former coach. I have a hard time believing it was that big of a deal. I have an absolute hard time believing it was that big of a deal. There's no way in the world you're going to ever sell me on the fact that it was that big of a deal. He looked horrible. He overthrew everybody. He missed badly. Sometimes he was throwing in the wrong zip code. Heck, sometimes he was throwing it was the wrong area code. And again, can't tell me it was the weather. He played in New England for over 2 decades, and he never had a problem with the weather before. So don't tell me the weather last night all of a sudden was a big deal, because it wasn't. because he didn't have a problem with it for 2 decades. So it doesn't all of a sudden in one night become a problem. And the emotions, garbage. I'm not buying that story either. Tom Brady looked like Tom Brady looked because Tom Brady is not what everybody says he is. He had a hard time playing against somebody who schemed correctly against him, but with an inferior team, those wide receivers should have had no problem getting open. That run game should have had no problem breaking through and getting the runs that they needed to get. And they should have had no problem being a well-balanced team. But Tom Brady looked horrific. Every time they went deep, he was in the wrong zip code. And when he threw, again, a lot of those balls were heading out of bounds. They were overthrown. They were underthrown. They were behind players. That's on Tom Brady. Tom Brady played a bad game against everything the national media guys are trying to tell you about how great he played last night and how he overcame emotions. I don't know what game they were watching, but I didn't see him. If emotions were the case, and I'm saying they're not, but if emotions were the case, let's play devil's advocate and say they were. Tom Brady never overcame him because he overthrew, underthrew, and threw behind all his receivers all night long. And he barely won a game against the superiorly inferior team known as the New England Patriots, and they barely won the game. And they only won because New England missed the field goal. Because I could easily make the argument, had New England made the field goal, Tampa Bay wouldn't have drove all the way down the field because they weren't able to move the ball on that defense all night long. That was like mission impossible. Absolutely mission impossible. They could not move the ball against that defense and an inferior defense at that, and they could not move the ball all night long. I can easily make the argument, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct in this assessment, that there's no way in the world that Tampa Bay would have drove down far enough unless there were penalties, because there's always the refs. We got to keep in mind the referees. Oh, we got to love referees. That's a whole nother conversation. But unless there was referee involvement, they would not have driven down the field far enough to get a field goal against the defense, because that defense, even though they were inferior, was able to bottle up the great Tom Brady, who was also inferior, overthrowing, underthrowing, throwing behind his receivers all night long. And the way he was playing, there's no way they were going to drive down the field all night long. They couldn't do it. So why would they all of a sudden be able to do it now? There's just no way. So a lot of stuff being said by the national media guys, that's false. Absolutely 100% false. So no, there's just no way. So that's the breakdown of the Sunday night game. Now we're going to go over in time. Normally I only do 30 minutes. My executive producer is probably going to be mad at me today, but I'm definitely going to go over because we got to talk about a couple other things. Dallas Cowboys. So let's talk about really quickly. National media guy said that, again, the Super Bowl favorites, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's what they said. They even said that even after the game last night. But then they also turned around in the same breath, confused me a little bit, and said that the Super Bowl favorites and the most impressive victory yesterday was the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, we're going to have to talk about this one. Dallas Cowboys. All right. So the most impressive victory was the Dallas Cowboys. Now, again, I watched a lot of football yesterday. I watched a lot of highlights yesterday. I pretty sure I saw the same things that the national media guys saw. The most impressive victory was not the Dallas Cowboys. First of all, they played the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers fought hard, played hard. And by the way, if it was an impressive victory, why was Dallas losing at the end of the half? At the end of the first half, they were losing 14-13. So I'm a little confused as how Dallas was so impressive and they were losing at the end of the first half 14-13 and they were playing at home and losing at the half, number one. Number two, the other thing that I'm a little confused about is you beat Carolina. Yes, Carolina's 3-0, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the last game that they won was against Jacksonville, the worst team in football. And they lost 40% of their offense, really 100% of their offense, if you really think about it, and Christian McCaffrey, because he went down in that game. Yes, they were still able to win that game, but they were able to win that game against the worst team in football, so not impressive. So they're 3-0, and Christian McCaffrey is what makes that offense go. Christian McCaffrey was not there in last night's game against the Dallas Cowboys, and so you really wouldn't expect much out of that offense, and they still were able to put up points. They were still able to play one solid half against that allegedly overrated Dallas Cowboy defense that all these national media guys are talking about now. trying to say how great they are and how great they looked. And, oh, they were naming all these players and they're so great and they're so this and they're so that. And, oh, the Cowboys are unstoppable. Now you had the defense with that unstoppable offense. And again, they overhyped the fact that they beat down the Panthers defense, but that's because they had an inept offense. And when you have an inept offense and your defense spends all the time on the field, eventually they're going to break down and they're going to loosen up. And anybody would have been able to run it up on them because, again, you had an inept offense because you don't have Christian McCaffrey, and that is what the offense is. And Matt Rule has to figure out how to make plays without Christian McCaffrey, and he hasn't figured it out yet because, again, you got Sam Darnold as a quarterback. There's another thing. You got Sam Darnold as a quarterback, an inferior quarterback. So when you got Dak, Sam Darnold, obviously, the teeter-totter goes in favor of the Dallas Cowboys, and it severely goes in favor of the Dallas Cowboys. So Sam Darnold's not a good quarterback. Sam Darnold is a backup quarterback, a future backup quarterback. He's not a starting quarterback in this league. Irregardless of what the national media guys are trying to feed you, you're seeing now what Sam Darnold is not. He's not a starting quarterback. Without Christian McCaffrey, he doesn't look good because he's not good. He didn't have a Christian McCaffrey when he played for the Jets, and he didn't look good. And he didn't look good until he got to Carolina, and he had a Christian McCaffrey. Now Christian McCaffrey's injured, and he's without Christian McCaffrey, and now Sam Darnold is what you saw with the Jets. So what you saw with the Jets, that is Sam Darnold. And it doesn't get any better, folks. He's not going to get any better. When Christian McCaffrey comes back, he might look like a better quarterback, but he's not a good quarterback. Now, maybe he's the type of quarterback that if you give him all of the most exclusive jewels that you could surround a quarterback with, maybe he's workable in that type of a format. And if he is, okay, cool. But if you're talking about, Sam Darnold on his own without a Christian McCaffrey, he's not. And the other handicap is Matt Rule. I believe Matt Rule's a decent coach, but I don't think he's a great coach because if he was, that offense would be running even without Christian McCaffrey, and it's not. And again, part of it is because Sam Darnold, without a bunch of excellent jewels surrounding him, isn't a good quarterback. So there's part of the problem. And then the other part of the problem is you got a coach that is Christian McCaffrey reliant as well. So when you have a reliant Christian McCaffrey coach and a reliant Christian McCaffrey quarterback, that's not a good recipe for success. So the fact that the Cowboys beat him doesn't make that an impressive victory just because we do agree that the Panthers have a great defense. But again, they were on the field all the time. That offense is inept. And it's inept because you don't have Christian McCaffrey because he is the offense. No two ways about that, folks. Christian McCaffrey is the offense for the Carolina Panthers. So that was not an impressive victory by the Cowboys. That is a misnomer. It's just these guys that are cheerleaders like they always are, screaming about how every year the Cowboys are the best team in football. And now, once again, they're screaming it and they're saying how the Cowboys, they are the NFC favorite and it's going to be between them and Tampa Bay. And they believe that they have a shot at defeating Tampa Bay. Some say they don't. Some say they do. But they all say they're going to be right there in the mix, in the conversation, in the NFC Championship game. And it's probably going to be the Cowboys and Tampa Bay vying for the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. All off of one victory over a team missing the most important component of their offense in Christian McCaffrey. And a defense that because they were on the field too much, they got exhausted. And that's simply all it was in regards to their ability to score and put points on the board against the Carolina Panther defense. So, I don't know. Serious knee-jerk and overreaction to that game yesterday? Absolutely. But again, the national media guys will do whatever it takes to make the Cowboys look and sound good. And again, they're going to be disappointed because the result's not going to be what they say it's going to be because it never is because the Cowboys are not that good. Again, I said they're a middle-of-the-road team. They are a middle-of-the-road team. They just happen to have the luxury of being in, again, a bad division with bad competition. Washington, who's horrible. New York Giants, who's horrible. And again, I get it. Everybody's trying to hype up Daniel Jones, say how great he is, how great he's playing, how it's not his fault that the New York Giants are losing. And now they're trying to say it's not, the coach's fault that the New York Giants are losing. Well, folks, it's somebody's fault because they're losing. And I get it, the general manager hasn't done a great job of putting together a great roster. That I'd agree with. But they got a pretty good roster, and they're not even being competitive. They're not winning games. They're not going to win games. They barely got their first win yesterday. I know there's people that are trying to make the argument that they are a, offsides penalty away from possibly being 2-2 because Washington missed that field goal attempt and they got a second attempt and they won that game. And maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. But again, even if they were 2-2, and I'm not a believer in shoulda, woulda, coulda, by the way, and I've always stated that. I'm not a believer in shoulda, woulda, coulda. But even if that were true and they were 2-2, they still have no shot at the division. They still have no shot at the playoffs. So you got a bad Eagles, a bad Giants, a bad Washington football team, a guaranteed division victory for the Dallas Cowboys. Does not make you a great team. But they're going to act as if, they're going to come out of the NFC East, they're going to win the division, and they're going to move on, and they're going to be in the playoffs. Congratulations. You're coming out of what is the number one worst defense on all sides of the ball, whether it's the Giants, the Washington football team, or the Eagles. All three of them, horrible defenses. The worst three defenses. The worst division, the worst competition, the worst teams in the NFL. The Eagles, the Giants, the Washington football team. So there's nothing to be excited about. The fact that the Cowboys are going to win the division, they're not going to be a deep threat team for the NFC Championship. Again, I know everybody likes to say all you got to do is make the playoffs and it's a brand new season and everybody's a deep threat. No, they're not. Some people make it just because they're in the worst division in football, like the Dallas Cowboys are. They're going to make it because they're in the worst division in football, and there's nothing else you could say about it other than that. So the fact that these guys are screaming as if they came out and they just beat one of the top-level competition teams in the NFL in the Carolina Panthers, no, they didn't. And they played against a team that's missing their offense in Christian McCaffrey because he is what makes that offense go. He's the missing component in the offense. And Carolina can only go as far as Christian McCaffrey can take them. Absolutely incredible. And then the most disrespected team in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals. That, folks, was the most impressive victory. They went into the team that allegedly was the best team in the NFC, allegedly the best team in the NFL. They last week beat what all the national media guys want to say is the best team in the NFL. And they beat them handily, and they got beat handily by the Arizona Cardinals. And they're getting disrespected in regards to the fact that nobody's talking about them as having the most impressive victory, and nobody's talking about them as being one of the best teams in the NFL. Now, do I believe the Cardinals are one of the best teams in the NFL? No. But considering the national media guys, the way they overreact every week to what everybody does, I just pointed out a perfect example. The Dallas Cowboys beat the Carolina Panthers, and apparently that just proves that they're the best team in the NFC. And yet the Arizona Cardinals are the team that beat what arguably is one of the best teams in the NFC, and they're still being disrespected, and everybody's still saying the Cowboys' victory was more impressive and the Cowboys are the better team, and that the Cardinals are nowhere near the level of competition that the Cowboys are. Absolutely unbelievable. And again, the disrespect only exists because these guys constantly want to feed you Cowboy garbage all year long, every season. And it's absolutely unbelievable. And not to mention, how about the Seahawks? I told you they'd figure it out. I told you they weren't done. I told you don't count them out. Granted, Jimmy Garoppolo went down, but I believe Seattle might have won that game yesterday anyways. And keep in mind, I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan, and I believe Seattle would have won that game anyway. And they're back, and they are now going against, on a short week, the LA Rams on Thursday night, which is going to be a very, very, very big game, a much more important and a much bigger game than the Patriots against the Buccaneers, which, oh my God, the game of the decade, the game of the century, that's a joke. There's a much bigger game happening on Thursday night between the Seahawks and the Rams than what took place last night between the Patriots and the Bucs. But again, Seahawks figured it out. The more impressive victory, although national media guys want to tell you that it's not, because they want to feed you and make you believe that the Cowboys was the most impressive victory yesterday. No, the most impressive victory yesterday was the Cardinals. Now, again, do I believe they're the best team in football? No. Do I believe they're one of the best teams in football? No. Do I believe that was an anomaly? Yes, but it doesn't matter. It still was the most impressive victory of the year, really, if you think about it. Not just the week, not just yesterday. That so far year to date is the most impressive victory. And yet national media guys all across the board want to tell you the same garbage because they're all shooting the same garbage. So they're all getting their same talking points from somebody that the Dallas Cowboy victory was the most impressive victory. No, it was not. The Arizona Cardinal victory was the most impressive victory. So again, a lot of garbage that the national media guys are getting wrong. A lot of garbage national media guys are trying to ram down your throat. I'm here to tell you it's not true. I'm here to tell you what is and what isn't. I keep it 100. I'm a sports fan doing a sports show for sports fans. I don't have a agenda being fed to me by networks or the NFL themselves, which apparently it's starting to sound like because everybody universally across the board, sports, national media-wise, is trying to feed you this garbage about the Dallas Cowboys. All right, so Monday night, here we go again. Another game, Raiders and the Chargers. A lot of things to be discussed in regards to this game, but look, I'm over time. I'm not really going to have time to get into it. We will definitely get into it tomorrow. We will definitely be talking baseball tomorrow. I know I intended on talking about it today, but I had to go over all the national media misnomers and things that are being said, and we had to have this discussion. Tomorrow we will definitely be talking about the Major League Baseball playoffs, and we will definitely be talking about this Charger-Raider game. You guys enjoyed tonight's game. I got to go watch it right now myself. We will talk tomorrow. You have a great day.